how I stay afloat is really a practice. And I think showing up for yourself, especially if you're the caregiver. If we're caregivers, often that role falls to people that are natural caregivers. Often it falls to the women, but not always. I know some wonderful men who are fabulous caregivers. But it's much easier for the caregiver to know what other people need. But the problem with caregivers is sometimes we lose the caregiver before we lose the patient, because the patient's getting all the care and the caregiver is giving it all, and at some point the tanks run dry. So how am I staying afloat is how we show up for ourselves to replenish our own tanks so that we have something to give with. For me, it ended up being my journaling. That was actually how I filled my tanks back up, so that I didn't have my own issues getting in Stephen's way. I could be present for Stephen. For Stephen, it was his meditation, and I remember him saying to me, he said, when I meditate, that's how I know who I am. And that was his life raft. That's what he rode through his illness. And I think he literally rode it out of this world, because it was his connection with his higher self, but also with the essence of self in his own heart. And that kept him very real. And that's one of the reasons that when I said, "Oh, poor Stephen," he said, "Don't say that." And that's why he wasn't poor, was because he had this connection that was bigger than whatever it was that he was going through. It was bigger than the pain of chemo or radiation or something like that. So that's the second question.